Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Shake Sales. I'm your host, Maggie Blume, the sales evangelist at Mailshake. And today I'm super excited to talk with Caroline Maloney, who's in Sales Enablement at Redis. She's also a host on the podcast, The Enablers, and today we're going to be talking all about sales enablement. So thank you so much for being here, Caroline. Do you mind taking some time to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so pumped to be here with you, Maggie. So like Maggie mentioned, I do enablement for SDRs at Redis. It is my favorite thing, honestly, working with SDRs. But if you had asked me 5 years ago where I think I would be right now, I would have told you Broadway. I was a professional actress, like really grinding and trying to pound the pavement to become an actress on Broadway. And so it's pretty crazy. Life took a 180 and I'm really happy with where I'm at right now, but it's a very interesting turn of events. So yeah, that's like, I guess a little bit like a 10-second snapshot into my backstory and where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I used to be in sales recruiting and I would like seek out people who were trying to pivot from acting or performers because they had become the best sales reps on the team. And I was like, this is so cool. And they weren't afraid to be creative. They weren't afraid to be like, go outside of the box and things like that. So I love that you came from that background. Probably a lot of it's transferable to what you do now.
Yeah, 100%. Most of it is, honestly.
That's amazing. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dive into this topic today, sales enablement. I will let you know, Caroline, I don't really know much about the enablement world, the operations world. I'm sure I do, but I've always worked at pretty small companies where we don't have an operations team or an enablement team. So it's probably someone else kind of picking up that to begin with. So that's why I'm really excited to talk with you. But just to, talk about it and set the scene, obviously enablement is in place and, to help sales rep, to help enable them to, be better at selling, to be better in their positions there. So with you in enablement right now, what do you think is your biggest blockers for sales reps?
I think that the biggest blockers for sales reps, and I'll answer this kind of at an SDR level, is bad management. Like having a manager who cares more about activity than they do results, having a manager that puts an unnecessary and frankly detrimental amount of pressure on their reps to just hit a certain activity KPI each day. Because I think what we see with a lot of these like pitch slaps and poor prospecting is reps who feel really scared about not hitting quota. And so they resort to a spray and pray, like, let me just get as many messages out as I can to please my manager. And that's not strategic. So that's not tactical. So I think that the biggest blocker for salespeople, frankly, is bad management, bad leadership. But I think if you do have really good leadership, if you have great enablement, great management, and you have a healthy team and a healthy culture and you're still not performing well, especially as an SDR at the prospecting level, you might be struggling with consistency. You might be struggling with repeatable processes. Like if you're not A/B testing what's working well for you, whether that's messaging, prospecting tactics, and if you're not keeping score of that somewhere or keeping track of it somewhere, you're going to be doing random acts of sales, random acts of prospecting, and you might be successful, you might not be, but you'll never know why you were or were not.
Yeah, totally. And I like that you pointed the problem to managing at first, because I think a lot of it is like, think about the SDR role. That's typically people's first sales job. Some people, I mean, obviously there's people that have been in sales before, but that's typically their first role in a sales organization. So it's like, how are they supposed to know that some of these things are, not the right things to do? And it's coming from that scarcity mindset more than let me, embrace this challenge. Let me try to be creative. Let me try new things out. And if you have a manager that's not really fostering that and just putting KPIs into place, it's like your brain is only going to work from a scarcity part of it, not like, hey, let's be creative about it and let's, try different things. Because then, like you said, once you do have a good manager, it really comes down to consistency. And also, I think keeping track of that. Like, I know there's so many times where I've tested things as an SDR and I never wrote it down, or I never when I first started out, I never, kept track of it. And it was detrimental because I'm like, wait, I'm going to try this again a year later and see if it works. So I think, yeah, you hit those two really, really well. And one question I had for you is like, how does enablement and management then for SDRs coincide or, work together?
Oh, that's one of my favorite questions. So enablement, sales enablement, and sales management and leadership have a lot of similarities and crossovers. If we're looking at this like a Venn diagram, there's probably a really big chunk in the middle that both of these parties share. However, I think that sales enablement is pretty much a completely different skill set than being a sales manager. I think that there are a ton of different things that we could break down that enablement should own, so to speak, and that management should own, like results, KPIs for enablement, KPIs for management. At the end of the day, I think that enablement leaders have a knack and a specific skill set around coaching, like whether that's call coaching, content creation, coaching around that. Whereas I think managers are helping to motivate, be strategic with an account, talk about how to break into an account and how to prospect. They're helping deliver KPIs for those reps based on what makes the most sense, like walking back from quotas and whatnot. And enablement's kind of doing a lot of the background work too, like the behind the scenes work. We're helping create sequences. We're creating that content. We're creating frameworks that reps work within. And then the managers are reinforcing all of that and coaching around what we've created. All that is to say, I don't think anyone really has it 100% figured out, because enablement is, it is such a relatively new, department at most companies. And, if you don't work really closely with leadership, enablement and leadership can go head to head a lot, and it's not great.
Yeah.
Luckily, at our company, we love each other. I'm very close with all the sales leaders and managers. So it's a different story at Redis, but I've definitely heard of instances where people are stepping on toes and it's like, who gets to own this and who gets to do this? So it depends.
But I think it's from your point, it's like taking some of that work off of the sales managers' plates. Because a lot of organizations I've worked at in the past, or just sales managers I talk to because I sell into sales managers, it's like they have a ton of things to do. Obviously, hopefully everyone, not hopefully, but I would like to meet a job where people don't have a ton of things to do, because it seems like most, but especially sales managers, because you just mentioned like two different things that a lot of sales managers just combine into one role. So like that whole enablement thing is left on their plate, when, enablement can make that a lot stronger, because like I was talking with my old sales coach, Mark Akers, about this, and he was talking specifically about call coaching and how like sales managers, that could be like the last thing that they have on their list. But as we know, and we get more data and we understand that managers really need to be there, or someone in enablement needs to be there to be listening back to these calls and giving feedback and coaching there too. But it's like something that they just honestly, at the end of the day, don't have time for when they're reporting to their leadership. They're pulling numbers, they're doing all these different things. So I love how you put it as like, they really, they have that overlap, that big overlap, but it's important to have the two and distinct the two from each other as well.
Yeah. Swim lanes are really important with any organization. So yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Yeah. And going back to this too, and just like we were talking about, it's like, I've never worked on a team where we have had a specific person in enablement. So I'm just curious, when do teams typically hire, a sales enablement person at their company?
So I can speak from experience and say that this company and my previous company are really the only two companies where I've been on an enablement team. And I don't know exactly when enablement was implemented at Redis. But I think that it would be my dream, my goal for every company would be for them to institute enablement at the genesis of the sales team creation. Like as soon as they start adding salespeople and sales leaders, they're adding enablement professionals and coaches and, enablement managers as well. So I think a lot of companies kind of are just catching up now and understanding like we really do need to delineate some of this work to enablement professionals. So I guess I think a lot of companies add enablement teams years after they already have standardized sales teams, which I think can add to the tension between sales leaders and enablement leaders sometimes, because you bring an enablement person in and it's like, this sales manager has been here for 5 years and they're like, well, what do you know? Like, I've been doing, and I'm not saying that, happens all the time, but I've definitely seen that happen where there's tension between, a tenured sales leader and a brand new enablement person.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because it's like you're coming, and I could see where, if you are not working with a team that's ready to, collaborate on things with enablement and management, that could be really difficult, because on one hand, it's like, well, I'm your manager. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, I'm the person in enablement. And it's like, you are coming in kind of like in the mix somewhere where it's a bit different of a relationship that you have with the rep. But I also see that as being like a super awesome positive, because when you're getting coaching from someone other than your manager, or, you're getting like this feedback or help or anything like that, not that your manager is not good at doing that, but just having one more resource where it's not the person who decides if you have a job or not at the end of the day, it makes it a lot easier to digest that information, to take that advice, and to ask like scarier questions. I think I've had that experience before.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We like jokingly refer to me at Redis as like the sales therapist sometimes. Like the SDRs can come to me and like vent, they can get pep talks, they can come to me with things that they wouldn't necessarily go to their manager for. Although I will say that the managers that we have for the SDRs are so incredible and like literally the best I've ever worked with. So it's great that they have all of this support, but you're right. It can be really helpful to have that outside perspective, especially when you feel like, I'm not talking to mom or dad, I'm talking to my cool aunt, like it's kind of enablement is like the cool aunt.
That's awesome. Yeah. Enablement's the therapist, the aunt, anything in between there, but cool. And yeah, I see where, it would be great collaboration, but also where it could be, a little different once you do hire an enablement person later on, of just getting used to, having that relationship with a manager. So thanks for going through that. And for me, I've talked actually with I've had the awesome chance to talk with some people who are in sales operations or revenue operations. So this is a big question that I have for you is, what's the difference between sales operations and sales enablement?
I've been most excited about this question because I've been thinking about this a lot. So if sales operations is the grand central station, sales enablement are all of the various vehicles that leave the station and that execute. And I think sales operations is like the beating heart of a sales org. They are typically the owners of the CRM. They are the creators of dashboards. And I mean, sometimes enablement does a lot of that too, especially at Redis. We have folks who do a lot of that. But sales operations, they're like the people who hold the keys to the castle in a lot of instances. And then sales enablement goes and executes, and we take control. We have all these awesome dashboards now that ops have helped us create. We have all of these different reports. I'll give you a good example. The other day we were talking in a meeting about sequences and sequence architecture. And we got off kind of on a tangent about a specific inbound sequence. And the question was, what if someone MQLs and marketing, so MQL for anyone who's not familiar is a marketing qualified lead. So if someone comes through the website asking for a pricing request or something like that, what if someone MQLs and they put their phone number in, they put their email in, but upon calling them, we realize it's a bad number. So we don't want to keep them in the sequence that has call and email steps. We want to put them in an email only sequence. So my question was, well, is there something in Salesforce land that we could do to disposition them specifically so that they're automatically taken out of that sequence and put into a new one? And in my mind, I'm like, I have no idea what that would be because I'm not super literate with Salesforce. But that's where someone like an operations leader would jump in and say, sure, here's how we fix that. So operations has such a crucial role in helping problem solve like that too, making sure reporting's clean, dashboards are accurate, and similar to the relationship that sales and marketing have to have and that enablement and leadership have to have. Enablement and operations have to be like twins. Like we have to be always attached, constantly working together. So it's a really great question. And I kind of see us as being, again, if you look at that Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap in the middle. But operations is crucial to enablement and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. You gave two great examples about the station. So really like what's going on, what's making that heartbeat there. And then enablement being the vehicles coming in and out of there too. And then just in the reverse of that, also, it's like, hey, you were the one on the enablement team kind of finding this, not problem, but potential problem of, hey, we don't want to enroll someone in this sequence. So how do we go back? How can I get information? And that's where, operations is right there, helping you along the way there. So I see how really, really closely working together, like you said, twins. Caroline, you're so good at putting in these different examples in here. I wish I could come up with those off the top of my head. Analogies, I should call them. My Friday brain is coming in. But no, that's awesome. And I like the way that you put those together. But yeah, and my next question was going to be, why do companies need enablement? And I know you answered part of it, but do you have anything else to kind of say on that?
I think it's tough, especially in economic downtimes. It's tough convincing companies that they need something that they often think is encompassed within sales leadership. Like I have spoken to some CEOs, CROs who feel that enablement should just be folded into leadership and every sales leader should be able to do what enablement does. And I think it's just a clear understanding of what enablement actually does. Because if you're asking your sales leaders to do all of that, you're asking them to do more than one job. So you better be prepared to pay them for the salary of two jobs. And they're most likely not. So I think it's just a matter of enablement continuing to evolve and people continuing to understand what it is enablement actually does, not just thinking, oh, that's a sales leader's role. That's a sales manager's role, because it's not. But I also, to play devil's advocate, like I do understand some teams are too small. Sometimes there's simply not enough budget to keep creating teams as much as you'd want to have it and you understand the value. And in that case, I would say to any sales leaders out there who don't have an enablement team and there's not one on the horizon, there's so many great people to follow on LinkedIn. There are playbooks. There are so many different things that you can do to level up your enablement skills.
Amazing. Yeah. And I like the argument you have, like, are you ready to pay that person in leadership double their salary? Or are you willing to lack quality in your enablement process? Because this person is trying to juggle two jobs at once. There's no way that they're going to be able to execute on both. And just going back to our point too of talking about managers and how they struggle to do both and how things are left off of their plates where they're not able to do everything that's kind of thrown at them well, because there is just so much going on there. But I love what you say about, following some people there on LinkedIn. Do you have some suggestions? And then also, where can people find you so they can learn more about enablement?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Please, by all means, follow everyone on my team. The enablement team at Redis is frankly, world class. And you should absolutely, especially my boss, Jerry Farr, he was the first enablement hire at Outreach. And he kind of created enablement there. And he's here at Redis now. Thank goodness. I don't know what I'd do without him. And Nav, one of my best friends and also my teammate, she does kind of the technical enablement at Redis. And Joe does onboarding and Sam does content. Phil does enablement for our closers, our CSRs. And then there's Julie and Ray and Lisa Contini, our senior vice president of enablement. So please give all of those people a follow on LinkedIn. We all try to post good nuggets of enablement resources as frequently as possible. I would also highly recommend the Sam McKenna's of the world, following people who Will Allred. Can I curse on here? I'm sorry. I fucking love lavender.
Yeah, you're fine.
So please do follow Will Allred, Will Balance, follow all of the lavender people too, because lavender's dope. I can probably think of more and link them in the comments.
You're fine. Yeah, totally. And yeah, Caroline, where can people find you?
Yeah, oh my gosh. I'm just Caroline Maloney on LinkedIn. That's Maloney. Please connect with me. Don't just follow me, connect with me so that I can see your content too and support you. I would really look forward to connecting.
Awesome. Well, Caroline, thank you so, so much. For those of you listening, definitely follow Caroline's content. She has tons of tips for SDRs out there as well. And she even has her own podcast, The Enablers. But Caroline, thank you so much for being on here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Maggie.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Shake Sales. We'll catch you next time. Bye.